Well, I'm joined now by the Conservative MP, David Davis, who supports the decision for Dame Alison to resign. So right that she's gone in your mind. Do you think more heads should roll at NatWest?
Well, first, I think it was inevitable she would go. I mean, the breach was a breach of confidence. I mean, put to one side the reasons for removal of Mr. Farage from his account. We should all expect absolute confidence in protecting our privacy by a bank. So it's absolutely inevitable. It's just surprising it took so long, really. In terms of beyond that, well, the decision to remove his account appears to have been taken, as you said, on effectively political grounds. Now, that shouldn't be allowed to happen in this country. I mean, in truth, nobody has an absolute right to a bank account. Maybe that's a weakness in the law, because it's almost impossible to live in Britain today without some sort of bank account or credit card or debit card. So maybe that's a weakness in the law, but the truth of the matter is nobody should be penalised for their political opinions so long as they're legal, and Mr. Farage's opinions are legal. So there was a decision taken to commission a 40-page report, which was largely wrong as far as I could tell, and on the basis of that, a decision taken to remove his account. The person that initiated that decision, the person that took that decision, I think they're going to have to explain themselves. And if the explanation is not very good indeed, then I think more than one other person will lose their role.
So questions really for the bank in terms of the actual structure of why it investigated Nigel Farage, rather than questions for those at the top about whether or not Alison was right to go and whether they backed her last night, you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think the board of NatWest covered itself in glory yesterday, bluntly. But unlike Mr. Farage, I don't think that's necessarily a sacking offence. I think it was a bad decision by them, but I wouldn't fire the whole board for that. But I do think the decision in slow time, in cold blood, to remove Mr. Farage's account was just wrong. It was done under the guise of previous legislation on politically exposed persons and so on. It was hidden behind the guise of, he didn't have enough money to justify a goods account. The truth of the matter is it was taken for political reasons. That should not be allowed in this country, ever. Doesn't matter what the politics are, whether it's left or right or wherever it is. It should never be allowed in this country. And whoever did it should have realised that. It doesn't take much brain power to realise that's morally wrong. We're a democracy. We allow freedom of opinion. We certainly don't penalise people economically because they differ from us, and that's what happened here. So that will, I'm afraid, require a further penalty.
Andrew Griffith has spoken to the banks today. He has made it very clear. He said it is not the bank's job to tell us what to think. You've talked about the banks clearly operating some kind of political discrimination here. If this is happening, how and why do you think this has been allowed to happen? This has been allowed to start almost inside these organisations?
Well, it isn't if. We know it's happened. I mean, we know it's happened in a variety of ways, broadly off the back of the politically exposed persons legislation. It's European legislation, which was actually very badly drafted. It was too crude. And it's happened to a lot of people. There was a whole House of Lords debate about this. So we know it's happened. I've had cases come to me which I haven't been able to resolve in the past of this. So it's just plumb wrong. It doesn't just apply to Coutts or NatWest. It applies to other banks too. And they make use of the fact that they don't have to give someone an account. Well, I think that may have to change. I think we may have to decide that people have a right to a bank account, and a bank can only take it away for economic reasons. If it takes it away for other reasons, or for reasons of political judgment of some sort, then there should be an adjudication procedure. It may well be we take away from the banks the power that they have at the moment to effectively disenfranchise people, and that's a long argument to be had. But
that would require legislation.
It would require legislation, but be clear, this applies across the industry. There isn't just the one case. Many of us have had other cases which we would have loved to have been resolved. Unfortunately, our cases weren't as famous as Mr. Farage. Now it's plainly in the public domain, and we can put it right.
Very briefly, do you have any hope that this case will lead to perhaps a cultural change in big organisations who felt the need to make moral stances about all sorts of things in recent years, when actually what the public largely want companies to do is provide a service rather than necessarily bombard them with flags and ideology.
Well, I think that's exactly right. You know, somebody buying a hamburger or a car or a radio or a television or whatever, or a house, expect the company to provide the service, do it honestly, pay their taxes, pay their employees and treat their employees properly. They don't expect them to be virtue signaling all over the place with your and my money. That's what it comes down to, because it's not their money. I think there needs to be a bit of a reset for where British business is going. It's tended to moralise an awful lot with other people's resources in the last few years, and that needs to come to an end.
David Davis, very good to talk to you, Conservative MP and former Cabinet Minister.